I, 34M, grew up in a modest middle-class family in a small town. My parents were hardworking people who always focused on my education and future. My father worked as a mechanic, often taking on extra shifts to make ends meet. My mother was a part-time receptionist at a local clinic and also did some freelance tailoring work from home. They weren't wealthy by any means, but they made sure I never lacked anything essential. From a young age, my parents filled in me the value of hard work and dedication. They taught me that success doesn't come easy and that I'd have to put in effort to achieve my goals. I remember my father always saying, "Son, there's no substitute for hard work. If you want something, you've got to earn it." Despite not having much, my parents always found a way to support my education. They bought me books, paid for extra tuition when I needed it, and even saved up to buy me a secondhand computer when I started high school. Their dedication to my future was untiring, and it motivated me to study hard and make them proud. Their sacrifices paid off. I managed to get good grades throughout school and secured a scholarship to a reputable university. I studied business management and graduated with honors. Soon after, I landed a well-paying job at a multinational corporation. As soon as I could afford it, I bought my parents a modest but comfortable house in a nice neighborhood. It was my way of showing gratitude for everything they'd done for me. The look of pride and happiness on their faces when I handed them the keys is something I'll never forget. About 5 years ago, my life took an interesting turn when I met Samantha, 32F, at an office seminar. She was from a different branch of our company, and we were both attending a training session on new management techniques. I was immediately drawn to her intelligence and wit. We started chatting during the coffee breaks and found we had a lot in common. After the seminar, we exchanged numbers and started meeting regularly. As we got to know each other better, I learned about her family background. Unlike my family, Samantha's family used to be quite wealthy. Her father had owned a successful real estate business, and they had lived in a large house in an upscale neighborhood. Samantha had attended private schools and had been used to a luxurious lifestyle. However, things had changed significantly for her family in recent years. Due to a series of poor financial decisions and some risky investments, her father's business had collapsed. They lost most of their fortune and were now drowning in debt. They had to sell their big house and move to a small apartment. It was a huge adjustment for the family, especially for Samantha's parents who were used to a certain standard of living. Samantha, being a good student, had managed to secure a decent job in our company. She was hardworking and ambitious, much like me. However, I soon noticed a troubling pattern in her relationship with her parents, especially her mother. Her parents, unable to accept their reduced circumstances, constantly pressured Samantha for money. They used emotional manipulation to get what they wanted. I remember one incident clearly. We had been dating for about 6 months when Samantha received a call from her mother while we were having dinner. Her mother was crying, saying they couldn't pay the rent and would be evicted if Samantha didn't help. Samantha immediately transferred money to them, canceling our plans for a weekend getaway we had been saving for. This wasn't a one-time occurrence. Her parents, especially her mother, would guilt-trip her by saying things like, "If you really loved us, you'd help us out," or "We gave you everything when you were growing up, and this is how you repay us." They seemed to have no regard for Samantha's own financial stability or future. I tried to make Samantha see that her parents were taking advantage of her, but she always defended them. "They're going through a tough time," she'd say, or "They've always been there for me. I can't abandon them now." It was frustrating to watch, but I tried to be supportive. There were countless instances that showed how her parents were exploiting her kindness. Once, when Samantha's car broke down, she asked her parents for help, since she had just given them a large sum of money to pay off some urgent debts. They told her they couldn't afford to help, and that she should be more responsible with her finances. I was furious, but Samantha just seemed resigned. Despite this, she still sent them money the next month when they asked for help with medical bills. When I first met Samantha's parents, about a year into our relationship, I was taken aback by their behavior. Her mother's first question to me after barely a hello was, "Are you rich?" It made me incredibly uncomfortable, but I brushed it off for Samantha's sake. Throughout the dinner, they kept making subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, inquiries about my job, my salary, and my family's background. It felt more like an interview than a casual meet-the-parents dinner. As time went on, I noticed how often they would call Samantha asking for money. They always had an excuse, a broken appliance, an unexpected bill, or a can't-miss investment opportunity that would surely turn their fortunes around. Samantha would always give in, even if it meant dipping into her savings or maxing out her credit cards. 3 years after we started dating, Samantha and I got married. It was a beautiful ceremony, though I couldn't help but notice how Samantha's parents complained about every little detail that wasn't up to their standards. I had hoped that her parents would back off after our wedding, realizing that Samantha now had her own family to think about. But if anything, they became more persistent. Samantha's mother would call almost weekly, always with a new financial crisis that only we could solve. It started to put a strain on our relationship. We'd argue about budgets and spending, with Samantha always defending her decision to help her parents. One particularly frustrating incident happened on our first wedding anniversary. We had planned a nice dinner at an upscale restaurant, something we'd been saving for months. Just as we were leaving, Samantha's mother called, claiming she needed money for an emergency dental procedure. Samantha, without hesitation, transferred the money, canceling our dinner plans because we couldn't afford both. I was upset, but tried to be understanding. However, a week later, we found out through Samantha's cousin that their mother had used the money for a spa day with her friends. When confronted, her mother brushed it off, saying she needed some stress relief. Another time, Samantha's parents asked for a loan to start a small business. They promised to pay us back with interest within 6 months. Against my better judgment, we gave them a substantial amount, nearly depleting our savings. 6 months came and went, and there was no business and no repayment. When Samantha gently asked about it, they acted offended and said she was being greedy and unsupportive. The situation was taking a toll on our marriage. We couldn't plan for our future or save for big purchases because there was always some crisis with her parents that needed funding. Vacations were postponed, home improvements were put on hold, and our dream of starting a family seemed to be slipping away. I tried to be patient and supportive, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. I suggested that Samantha seek therapy to help her set boundaries with her parents, but she refused, saying I was overreacting. I proposed setting a monthly limit on how much we could give her parents, but she said that was too transactional for a family relationship. The situation came to a head last week. Samantha was upset because her parents had asked for money again, this time for a cousin's wedding gift. They promised to pay back previous loans, swearing things would be different this time. Despite my objections, Samantha gave them the money but was complaining to me about how they never keep their promises. I'd had enough at this point. Years of frustration and resentment came pouring out. I told Samantha, "Look, I understand they're your parents, but this has to stop. They're taking advantage of you, and it's affecting our financial stability and our relationship. You have 2 choices. Either you stop giving them money and set clear boundaries, or you keep doing what you're doing but stop complaining to me about it. I can't keep watching you get hurt and stressed over this." I went on to explain how their constant demands were affecting our lives. We couldn't save for our future. We were postponing our plans to start a family, and we were constantly stressed about money despite both having good jobs. I pointed out how her parents never seemed to appreciate her sacrifices or make any effort to improve their own situation. Samantha got very upset. She accused me of being cold and not understanding her relationship with her parents. She said I was trying to come between her and her family and that I was being selfish. She brought up how I had bought a house for my parents, conveniently ignoring the fact that it was a one-time gift, not a constant drain on our resources. I tried to explain that I wasn't asking her to cut off her parents completely, just to set some healthy boundaries. I suggested we could help them find financial counseling or look into government assistance programs. But Samantha wasn't having any of it. She stormed off, saying I could never understand because I didn't come from a respectable family like hers. It's been a few days, and things are still tense between us. Samantha's barely speaking to me, giving me the cold shoulder and making passive-aggressive comments. Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone with her mother, promising to send more money next week. It feels like we're back to square one. I love my wife, and I want to support her, but I'm at my wit's end with this situation. I feel like I'm watching her be manipulated and taken advantage of, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's affecting our marriage, our future plans, and our day-to-day happiness. I've tried talking to my own parents about this, seeking their advice. They're sympathetic, but admit they don't know how to handle such a situation. My father suggested I try to talk to Samantha's parents directly, but I fear that would only make things worse. I'm starting to wonder if I'm the problem. Am I being too harsh? Should I just accept that this is how things are going to be and learn to live with it? But then I think about our future, about the family we wanted to start, and I feel angry and frustrated all over again. So, Reddit, Am I wrong for wanting to put our financial stability and our future first? Or am I being insensitive to my wife's family ties? I'm lost and could really use some outside perspective on this. Update. It's been 2 weeks since my last post, and I wanted to update you all on the situation with my wife and her parents. Things have taken a dramatic turn, and I'm still processing everything that's happened. After our argument about her parents' constant financial demands, my wife and I weren't on speaking terms. The tension in our house was intense. We slept in separate rooms and only communicated when absolutely necessary. I was hoping we'd eventually cool down and be able to have a rational discussion, but things took an unexpected turn. One evening, I came home from work to find my mother-in-law in our living room. My wife informed me that her mother would be staying with us for a week to help settle things between us. I was shocked and angry that my wife had made this decision without consulting me, especially given our current disagreement. However, I bit my tongue, not wanting to escalate the fight with my wife. The first few days of my mother-in-law's stay were uncomfortable, to say the least. She acted as if nothing was wrong, making herself at home in our space. I tried to be polite for the sake of peace, but I couldn't shake the feeling that her presence was making things worse, not better. As the days passed, I started noticing some strange occurrences around the house. Small items began to go missing. A watch I rarely wore, some cash I had in my desk drawer, even some of my wife's costume jewelry. At first, I thought I was just misplacing things due to stress. But then I noticed a pattern. Every time something went missing, my mother-in-law would return from her outings with new shopping bags. I tried to talk to my wife about this, but she brushed off my concerns. She said things like, "Mom's been through a lot. She probably just wanted to treat herself a little. It's not a big deal." Her dismissive attitude frustrated me, but I didn't want to push the issue without concrete proof. The situation came to a head about 5 days into my mother-in-law's stay. I was at work when I received a frantic call from my wife. She was in tears, barely able to get the words out. When she finally calmed down enough to speak, what she told me sent a chill down my spine. My wife had discovered that her mother had stolen her credit card and a significant amount of her jewelry, including some family heirlooms. Now, my mother-in-law wasn't answering her phone, and my wife didn't know what to do. I left work immediately and rushed home. When I arrived, I found my wife in a state of panic. She had torn apart the guest room looking for her missing items, but to no avail. I tried to calm her down and suggested we call her father to see if he knew anything. When we reached my father-in-law, he seemed genuinely surprised by the news. He said he hadn't heard from his wife all day, which was unusual. However, what bothered me was his immediate defense of her. He told us not to jump to conclusions or accuse her of anything. It was clear he was either in denial or complicit in her behavior. We spent the next few hours trying to reach my mother-in-law, but all our calls went straight to voicemail. We were about to call the police when my wife's phone rang. It was her mother. My wife put the call on speaker. Her mother's voice came through, sounding distressed, but with a flow of manipulation that I had come to recognize. She claimed she was at home and needed money urgently to pay off a loan shark. She swore she had borrowed money to invest in a sure thing, but it had fallen through, and now the lender was threatening her. My wife was angry. She demanded to know about the credit card and the missing jewelry. Her mother feigned ignorance at first, then quickly changed tactics, saying she had only borrowed them and intended to return everything once this crisis was over. She begged my wife to help her one last time. I had heard enough. Years of frustration, hatred, and anger boiled over. I took the phone from my wife and told her mother in no uncertain terms that if she didn't return everything she had stolen within 24 hours, we would be going to the police. I then hung up, my hands shaking with anger. My wife stood there, shell-shocked. The reality of her mother's actions seemed to finally sink in. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Despite my anger, my heart broke for her. I held her as she cried, feeling sad. When she had calmed down, we sat down to talk. It was the first real conversation we'd had in weeks. I told her that I couldn't continue living like this. The constant stress, the financial drain, and now direct theft. It was too much. I laid out an ultimatum. Either we cut ties with her parents and seek therapy to work on our issues, or I would file for divorce. I hated having to resort to such drastic measures, but I felt I had no choice. Our marriage had been suffering for years because of her parents' influence, and this latest incident was the last straw. I loved my wife, but I couldn't stand by and watch her be manipulated and abused any longer. To my relief, my wife didn't argue. The theft seemed to have finally opened her eyes to the toxic nature of her relationship with her parents. She agreed that we needed to set firm boundaries and seek help to work through our issues. The next day, my mother-in-law showed up at our door with a bag containing my wife's jewelry and credit card. She tried to explain herself, spinning a tale of desperation and good intentions, but my wife wasn't having it. For the first time, I saw my wife stand up to her mother. She told her that she needed help, but we wouldn't be the ones to provide it anymore. She said they needed time apart to reevaluate their relationship, and until her mother sought professional help for her issues, they wouldn't be in contact. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tears and recriminations from my mother-in-law. But my wife stood firm. When her mother left, I felt a weight lift off both our shoulders. In the days that followed, we took several steps to protect ourselves. We changed our locks, canceled and replaced all our credit cards, and set up fraud alerts on our accounts. We also reached out to a therapist who specializes in family issues and codependency. It's been a week since then, and things are still raw. My wife has moments of doubt and guilt, but she's committed to working on herself and our marriage. We've had long, honest conversations about our future and what we want from our relationship. For the first time in years, I feel hopeful about our future together. We've also started to reconnect with friends we had drifted away from due to the constant family drama. It's been refreshing to spend time with people who respect our boundaries and don't have ulterior motives. My wife's father has called a few times, alternating between guilt-tripping and pleading for us to reconsider. We've stayed firm in our decision, reiterating that until her mother seeks help, we won't be in contact. It's been hard for my wife, but she understands it's necessary for our well-being. Looking back, I realize I should have pushed harder for boundaries earlier in our relationship. I was so afraid of coming between my wife and her family that I allowed the situation to spiral out of control. It's a mistake I won't make again. I'm grateful for the advice and support I received from my previous post. It gave me the courage to stand my ground and fight for our marriage. We have a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're on the same page. To those who might be in a similar situation, don't wait until things reach a breaking point. Set boundaries early, communicate openly, and don't be afraid to seek help. Your peace of mind and the health of your relationship are worth it. Thank you all for listening, and I'll update again if there are any significant developments.